2021 was a scary-ass year all on its own, but there were some truly exceptional films along the way that really amped up the fear factor. From werewolves to haunted houses, last year had plenty of quality horror features that kept us fear fanatics sane during the ongoing pandemic. Here are my personal choices for what I think were the top 10 best horror films of 2021. When Jordan Peele is involved, you take notice. Yet, the long-awaited Candyman redo was alright. The trailer really hyped this one up, not to mention the fact that we had to wait so long to finally take this one in, thanks to the COVID pandemic. But, to be honest, it was somewhat of a letdown. That's not to say that Candyman is not a well-done film that, I believe, complements the 90s franchise well, because there is plenty to appreciate here, including the sound, the performances, and the all-around atmosphere. One of the coolest takeaways with this film is that it made Nia DaCosta the first African-American female director to have a film premiere atop the box office. An American Werewolf in London has, for the most part, set the bar for werewolf films, and it has certainly stood the test of time, although there have been a number of other werewolf films since that have left their mark as well. Teddy, co-written and directed by French twin brothers Ludovic and Zoran Bukrma, is one of those films. Perhaps because it doesn't focus on the actual werewolf aspect, to the point where it's hard to truly classify this film as such, and we rarely see the creature itself, but also because it's just so well done. It is different than what you would expect from an American feature, especially if you're here for the gore factor. There's some, but nothing gratuitous, as the filmmakers choose to focus on the lead character's personal struggles instead. I have so much respect for those do-it-all types of filmmakers, the ones who turn a film into a personal passion project in which they invest all their time, effort, and skills into until they've come up with something special. Anthony Scott Burns in his latest film Come True is a perfect example of this sort of filmmaking, as he took on not only the directing of this Canadian sci-fi horror, but also the writing, editing, and cinematography, and he even provided some of the score under his musical stage name, Pilot Priest. Now that's dedication. The Block Island Sound is a film that refuses to fall into any particular category, preferring to embrace elements of various genres to unravel its mysterious narrative. I think it's safe, however, to place this film somewhere within the horror realm, as it evokes feelings of uneasiness, foreboding, and fear. However, don't go into this movie with an appetite for gore, jump scares, or some sort of Michael Myers type bad guy, because it isn't that kind of film. In fact, The Block Island Sound will likely split audiences, with some appreciating its nuances and simmering dread, while others will simply find it boring. Prano Bailey Bond's feature film directorial debut Censor centers around actual events that took place in the UK during the 1980s, known as a video nasty scare. But it's not just the exploration of that real-life history of the low-budget horror and exploitation films era that makes this film a fascinating piece of horror cinema. The visceral imagery, the dire atmosphere, and the dreary 80s backdrop really lifts Censor above and beyond most other horror features from 2021. Like so many other new female directors that have exploded onto the horror scene as of late, I can't wait to see what Bailey Bond comes up with next. I love it when filmmakers take real events from history and add their own fictional twist to it, blending reality with make-believe. It gives any story an element of authenticity, yet offers a fantastical tale to draw you in, such as with Karina Faith's spine-tingling feature The Power. The film is set against 1974 London, in the midst of a labor crisis that saw the government conserving energy during a coal mining strike that plunges the city into darkness during the evenings for months. Faith is relentless with fear in The Power, ensuring its audience is never at ease for long once the mood has been set. While calming color tones seem to offer up a false sense of security, dark rooms and empty halls are used to instill dread, and callous characters are utilized to heighten the tension. There are some truly terrifying scenes and scenarios in The Power, such as William's masterfully freakish body contortion on the floor of one of the hospital rooms. You'll know when you see it. Although I almost always enjoy the subgenre itself, I am often hesitant to invest my time in a comedy horror film. I don't really know why, because I enjoy both comedies and especially horror movies, but there's just something about this specific subgenre of horror that keeps me at bay. Perhaps I feel like this horror genre should be mostly absent of humor, or that the comedic scenes will take away from the scare factor of any given film. Nonetheless, I was immediately drawn into Vicious Fun, a Canadian feature by Canuck director Cody Callahan. To say the least, I was pleasantly surprised. Although the plot has horror written all over it, Vicious Fun certainly comes off more as a comedy, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. There are plenty of genuinely gory scenes if that's what you're into, and plenty of twists and turns that really make this film a must-see. Toss in some stylish 80s music to go along with its neon imagery. For the record, this movie is set in 1983, and you've got yourself a fresh and original story that is hands down one of the best horror films of 2021. Rebecca Hall really helps move this film along, as we experience her struggles not only with the death of a loved one, but also as she tries to figure out whether or not she is going insane, or is instead dealing with a real-life haunting at her secluded home. Hall's character, Beth, is grieving her husband's suicide, while simultaneously dealing with how angry she is that he left her alone in a house that has plenty of secrets of its own. Director David Bruckner, who had previously worked on the VHS anthology film, gives us a moody and effective psychological ghost story with Night House. Although the twist ending, which takes its sweet time to reveal itself, is not all that it's cracked up to be. Nonetheless, The Night House was easily one of the best horror features of 2021. You'd probably never guess that this film is actually based on a video game, but you'd be wrong. In fact, Werewolves Within currently stands as the highest rated film based on a video game on both Metacritic and Rotten Tomatoes, and with good reason. Although the film has issues in various aspects, they're rather minuscule for the most part, but I'd rather focus on the good rather than what little there is of this film I'd consider bad. Directed by newcomer Josh Rubin, Werewolves Within is essentially a werewolf-themed whodunit, with plenty of laughs and twists along the way. Lead Sam Richardson, who plays a forest ranger newly assigned to a small, eccentric town named Beaverfield, is a standout here, although there are several other supporting characters that really keep you invested. If you're into comedy horror, you can't go wrong with this IFC feature. Some of the best horror movies ever made are ones that are based around ancient rituals, traditions, or customs. Everything from The Exorcist to The Witch. Keith Thomas, who wrote and directed The Vigil, skillfully crafts his entire film after one such custom. According to the opening text in the film, The Vigil is an ancient Jewish tradition in which someone is expected to sit with the body of the recently deceased overnight, known as a shomer. Usually that person is a family member or close friend, but when that is not possible, a stranger can be paid to keep vigil instead. Thomas embraces his limitations here, and despite a tight budget, he manages to pull together a wonderfully dreadful film that does not let up on the suspense. With restricted settings and a lean cast, The Vigil uses shadows, lighting, and the occasional jump scare to set the mood of anxious dread, almost entirely throughout its 90-minute runtime. And despite being set in New York, the visual style of this film often comes off as something you might see in a European production, which is always a plus in my book. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please feel free to like and subscribe. Take care.